bad.
What's up? Another episode of Rope Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Vrenz, also known as Ricky Vrenz. I just did 2 podcasts, about an hour and a half each, so I'm going to try to keep this intro short so you guys can get right to the meat of the conversation and to make sure some of my talking fatigue doesn't come through in this intro. Plus, you guys are sick of me ranting, I'm sure. I've been putting out a lot of content. I mean, obviously, with all this extra time, it's been an awesome opportunity to really book guests, get people on, put out more shows, and hopefully this is a look into one day will be my future. I know I get a lot of downloads in Saudi Arabia. How about some of you guys send me some Patreon support so I can finally do this full time? I'm just kidding, obviously. Like I always tell you, these conversations are super important. If you can't support the show financially, share the show. This conversation in particular, both conversations I had today, really awesome conversations and worth sharing, and you never know who's listening, who's going to be exposed to these alternative perspectives and views. And I think these type of discussions about everything and anything, and with people that are willing to be honest and challenge ideas, even their own ideas, and share their ideas, I think are super important. So today, Ed Clay, he is the owner of CHIPSA Hospital, an alternative cancer treatment hospital in Mexico. They also do enhanced Gerson therapy and advanced immune therapy, and among other things. So great discussion. Remember to share the show, rate the show, subscribe to us on YouTube, RV36, or just search the Ripple Effect Podcast. Subscribe to us on any podcast app you're using, iTunes, Google Play, wherever it may be. And also share the show. Like I mentioned, this is a video episode, so unless something goes wrong by the time I edit and get this show uploaded, you will be able to see Ed and I have the discussion. So definitely check out that on YouTube if you're bored, which I'm sure many people are right now. But so please do that, and I will see you guys on the next one. Plenty of episodes coming up. If you support us on Patreon, you'll know who the guests are. Like I always tell you guys, if you're a Patreon supporter, I'll let you know when guests are booked and who's coming on the show and all that stuff, because usually you don't know who's coming on the show until the show's released. So it's just a little perk in supporting the show. And I know money's tight for many people, so from the bottom of my heart, everybody that is supporting, even if it's $1, even if it's whatever it may be, I truly, truly, truly appreciate it. There's many, many people who listen to the show who don't contribute not even $1. So if everybody who did listen to the show contribute $1, that's all I would need to probably quit my full-time job. So, you know, even if it's just $1, it goes a long way. And if everybody can do that, it would be awesome. But if not, share this stuff. I can't stress that enough. I see links being taken off YouTube. I see videos taken off Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google. They're all suppressing information and alternative views. So until it gets suppressed, keep sharing this stuff and do your part in trying to spread some honest discussion. So thanks again, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Thanks so much for being with me, Ed. I really, really appreciate it. I've heard your name come up quite a few times from a past guest I had some years ago, Eddie Bravo, a friend of yours. Cool. And then I've heard him talk about, the hospital and stuff like that, and your name kept coming up. And then I've heard some conversations about Max Gerson and, his research. And I'm a huge fan of alternative perspectives to health and all that stuff. And I've run into Max Gerson's work years ago. I think there was a documentary called, what was it, A Beautiful Truth or something like that?
Yeah, I think that was one of them. Yep.
Yeah, that kind of went into it, and I think that was one of the first ones that I saw that really explored his philosophies. But it's amazing how when you look at the history of medicine and natural remedies and alternative perspectives to health and medicine, how many great thinkers and how many people had great success trying alternative things? I had Dr. Brzezinski on years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He had,
Yep, absolutely.
his battle with the FDA, and then kind of having his treatment as something to at least entertain for people who are looking for alternatives. Just recently I had Jim Abrams on, who he from the Charlie Foundation. And, his story is a perfect example of how you can't. It's not even that doctors are attempting to suppress stuff on purpose. I mean, he had access to all the best doctors, hospitals. He had all these resources, all this stuff, and basically nobody recommended the ketogenic diet as even an option for his son Charlie's violent seizures. So for years and years and years, he did pharmaceutical drugs. He did his son had a surgery, I believe, and yet nobody once mentioned this to him. And of course, he was pissed when he found out, because think about just the stress it put on his son and his family that could have been prevented. So I love hearing stories about what you're doing, and what I love the most is that you're not like this was. It seems like completely left field for you, because you were in MMA and training, and I believe owned a gym, and now you're just passionate with helping people any way you can, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, actually, it kind of reminds me of the old days of mixed martial arts, especially with cancer treatment. Of back in the day, it was figuring out what style was the best style. Is it Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Is it taekwondo? Is it karate? And then you started seeing the sport kind of evolve, and I think that's kind of where we're getting at now with cancer treatments. 2011 and 2018, immunotherapy for cancer won the Nobel Prize. Before that, in many ways, it was considered quackery. So one of our chief medical officer for United Cancer Centers, and he's on our scientific advisory board for CHIPSA Hospital in Mexico. He was the former chief of immunogenetics and infectious disease for the National Institute of Health. And he actually wrote one of the main textbooks that oncologists use for immunotherapy for cancer. And he said, 15 years ago, what we're doing now wasn't considered real science. And so, I commend guys like Dr. Marancola for, keeping on and driving forward and kind of seeing the big picture when you're faced with a lot of people telling you that, that's never going to work. Or, he was like a big scientist, a respected scientist. But for people that aren't at his level, they're told, oh, this is quackery, and this is just, they're pushed down, even more, especially when you see these anecdotal things, these cases where it's kind of hard to deny that the tumor is shrinking. It's kind of hard to deny that the patient isn't getting better. And if you take out the variables, like they didn't do any chemotherapy, they didn't do all these other things, it's like, well, it kind of leaves just this to be what could have been the cause of, the cause of the reduction. So, but it's a weird system that we have. I'm not into the big conspiracy idea of it. Actually, I think that there's a lot of righteousness. And instead of like a conspiracy of these people are just looking to make money and make people sick, or I don't actually think it's that personally. I just see a lot of big egos, and the egos are in many ways what keeps amazing innovation from coming through, because they want to shoot down these different ideas, really quick.
Well, I mean, like the Jim Abrams story, for example, he runs he ended up finding a book that was talking about the John Hopkins study and research that they were doing and having success with the ketogenic diet in the 70s, I believe. And then soon after, they came out with prescription drugs that were doing the same thing, or they had some success with, and they basically little by little kind of filtered out any dietary measures and treating it, the seizures. So it wasn't like you said, it's not like an intentional conspiracy. I think it's kind of like just how capitalism works. It's like, well, we need to make money. This we can patent. This does the same thing, and we can make profit off. And sometimes it's just suits and ties, making business decisions, and not caring about the overall picture or caring about whose lives they're affecting or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it is that simple, where it's just like, okay, well, somebody decided this over this, not because they were morally evil, but because they were just looking at ones and zeros and what got them more ones and zeros in the bank account. But it is, it is heartbreaking, because you hear, I remember the first time I watched that Brzezinski documentary, and to see people who were testifying in court saying that, according to modern medicine, they should have been dead, that everybody said they had 6 months to live, they're terminally ill. And only people who were terminally ill could see them because it was considered like a experimental treatment or whatnot, and it was FDA approved. And then, them talking about how the tumor shrank and all this stuff, and they could have, this guy possibly saved their lives, and then yet, like, it's not even an option for many people. Like, a doctor won't even tell you it's an option, and I think that's the thing that bothers me. It's like, how much better than the stuff that's being recommended to you does something have to be for it to at least be a option that people are given, like, because I mean, we know for a fact that chemo and radiation, radiation causes cancer. So you're killing cancer with something that causes cancer. So the likelihood of getting cancer in the future, possibly a different type of cancer, actually increases. My mother-in-law, my wife's mom, she beat breast cancer, and years later, one day didn't feel good, was rushed to the hospital, and found out there was cancer everywhere. And I saw this cycle of, they put her on chemo and radiation. She got so weak that she couldn't deal with it anymore. Then they got her off it. In a day or two, she looked better. She sounded better. And then like, she's ready for more chemo and radiation. And they gave it to her. And it's like, from the outside looking in, I was like, it looks like the chemo and radiation is killing her much faster than the cancer is. And so, to me, it's like we're almost just a part of this machine that everybody kind of just accepted. And if you look at it from a logical perspective, it's like, well, this doesn't seem right. There must be other ways, other answers. But I know your story, I think, is fascinating. Also, just how I know you had some injuries, addiction to pills and stuff like that. Well, for people who aren't familiar with your backstory, do you mind getting into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I started training. My martial arts school, my mixed martial arts school, was one of the largest in the United States. I had a clothing line that if people train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they probably know, called Gameness. We were the largest supplier of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu martial arts uniforms in the world, and ended up selling those. But as I was training, actually, I was training with Robert Drysdale, who's he had come to Nashville, and we were doing some stand-up training. He was thinking about getting into MMA, and he wasn't really a stand-up fighter. So I was like, let me just get in the ring, and I'm just going to work with him light. I didn't really warm up properly, so I threw a kick, light kick. He checked it, and it just exploded my knee, tore my LCL, PCL, meniscus. And so we had team doctors. They had given me prescription pain pills. And I took them for about 2 years. And then I went to get off one day. I was like, I'm just good. And I went through withdrawal. And over a 6-month period, that happened, 3 or 4 times. And so I went to a therapist, and I asked, I said, hey, I'm completely functional running my companies, but I would rather have a clear brain and deal with the pain than a foggy brain and no pain whatsoever. And he said, America's behind the times when it comes to opiate withdrawal. Google Ibogaine. So I Googled Ibogaine, and it was illegal in the United States. It wasn't available here. And, but it was legal in Mexico. So, but I was still skeptical. I watched a couple of documentaries. I'm like, I'll give it a try. So I took a plane to Mexico City, took a bus a couple hours south, did Ibogaine in somebody's bedroom. I was home 72 hours later, never had withdrawal, never had a craving. And so my mom was really sick. And I asked myself, well, if this is not available in the United States and help me, what else is out there that's not available in the United States? And so I started doing research for her. And she had a very rare form of rheumatoid arthritis. She had failed all standard of care. She had gotten multiple staph infections. She'd gotten tuberculosis. She had just gotten really, really sick from the side effects of medication, staph infections. It was awful. So I had read a study on Coley's toxins for rheumatoid arthritis, and kind of making a long story short, there's a lot more in between there, but Scott Nelson, who owns OTM, is one of my best friends for the last 25 years. And I and Dedrick Perry went to Tijuana. We found this hospital that actually had Coley's toxins. We purchased the hospital for my mom. She was our second patient. She came in a wheelchair. She left 3 weeks later walking, and she's still doing great to this day, almost 5 years later. And it was the original Gerson hospital, though. And so they had treated a lot of cancer patients. So we'd kind of, all their doctors per se, we'd kind of hired the staff back. It had been closed for a couple of years. So we treated mostly cancer patients. And quite frankly, I saw a lot of people dying with Gerson therapy as well. And I say that because I don't think that there's a good answer, conventional or alternative, for stage 4 cancer. Have I seen anecdotal cases where their cancer goes away? Absolutely. But our idea was, how do we build bridges with the scientific community and work with everybody and bring in these cutting edge immunotherapies, or anything for that matter? I'm not attached to what the treatment is. And we have as holistic as approach as possible now. 4.5 years later, we still use Gerson therapy as an adjunct diet. We do not consider it a cancer therapy. Not that we don't have documentation, a history of seeing it shrink cancer sometimes, but you can't say that on a regular basis. And we don't see that on a regular basis, by the way. But in combination with things, we see some amazing results. Even to the point you were talking about how chemotherapy and radiation cause cancer, they absolutely do. But, to me, it's generally not all or nothing. So what if you're able to use 15 to 20% dose of chemotherapy? What if you're able to give certain treatments that potentiate the effects of the chemotherapy, so where it works better, to where you don't have to give as much? What if you use lower doses of radiation? What if you can use a lower dose of radiation and add something to make it more effective that can actually cause a shrinkage in another part of the body? So those are the types of things that we're looking at. Combination things, diet, power the mind, which is another big one that we use, natural treatments, and then cutting edge conventional treatments as well. So it's really a combination, kind of keeping an open mind through it all.
Yeah, I think the power of the mind is kind of something people don't talk enough about. I mean, it's
right.
They've done studies with like people in hospitals who see more brick buildings outside the windows, and then people in hospitals who see like woods and nature and stuff like that. Like the recovery rate is higher. I mean, we understand the mind body is connected. I think a lot of people during this quarantine thing who's going crazy at home, they realize like how much that exercise mentally made them feel better, and things that mentally make you feel better physically make you feel better. So it's like they're connected. They're not two separate things. When one feels good, the other one feels good.
No, absolutely. And with all this coronavirus stuff going on, I worry about the effects of the isolation of the patients. Another thought that goes in my mind, like, you have patients that many of whom are dying alone, which is the fear a lot of us have, is to die alone. And so, we're putting these patients in these environments where they don't have any real physical contact with their loved ones. And, what is that doing to the rate of mortality with this? I think that's a power of the mind type issue. So you're losing confidence. You're not having that human connection. That's a lot of what power of the mind is that we use at CHIPSA. We have a power of the mind class. We have 3 full-time psychologists. I mean, we hit those. A lot of healing. There's a good idea that a lot of healing comes from human connection, real human connection, human interaction, love, physical touch, like just those things that there aren't great scientific studies on it, but we know them to be true. I feel like I know it to be true. To what extent, I can't say. I can't say that if you have a powerful mind, you're going to be this much more likely to survive your stage 4 cancer. But I can say confidently that I believe that it does have some impact with some people, and a lot of impact with some people possibly. So, I think it's very, very underestimated. It's underutilized. It might be the most important thing even. I've said that a few times. Like I think it could be the most important thing. Think about this. We're training a fighter for a fight, and we tell a fighter, don't even worry about focusing on the fight. Don't worry about having a strong mind. You're just going to go in there and fight. We would be the worst coaches ever. We'd be awful coaches if we did that. Of course, we're getting our fighter to visualize. I used to have all my fighters, every push-up, I am a champion, I am a champion, I am a champion. Those type of things. That's the power of the mind. Meditation, the power of the mind. And so it is underutilized in medicine. And I think that scientists probably, like mainstream science, might shy away from it because it's very hard to get people to do it. I mean, one of the reasons I think a lot of these treatments aren't more mainstream, or these things aren't more mainstream, is because, we got to get patients to do it. Like Gerson therapy. Gerson therapy, I'm a believer. My mom does it. I've done it. I know the power of it. But, getting somebody to drink 13 fresh pressed juices a day, I mean, and no salt and a kind of a bland diet, it's hard to get anybody to do. So we have to take that into consideration too. So, giving the scientists maybe a little grace that have been against it, maybe some of them just don't think that it's practical overall. And maybe they're right that it's not practical overall, but it doesn't mean you should just dismiss it. That's my other comeback on that one. So a lot of different things that go on in my mind with this stuff different perspective just from my experience.
Yeah, I think that was something that Jim Abrams also said, something about like the doctor saying, well, I think when he brought up to some of his doctor friends, they're like, well, it's not easy doing the keto diet, so just continue to. And it's like, wait, this is much harder, giving him prescription drugs, making him a zombie. But it's funny because Eddie Bravo, I remember hearing him during an interview talk about the Wim Hof method, which I'm a fan of, and I love Wim Hof, and I love his message and what he's trying to do. But I remember him talking about, he's like, this thing can increase your immune system, that you can increase your, all these benefits. And he's like, and my lazy ass still won't do it, And it's kind of, I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, that's so true. Cause I still do it from time to time, but I'm like, it's just breathing. It's not that, it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time to really do it correctly. And it's, I mean, obviously now it's been proven. And even his method, I mean, Wim Hof was a perfect example of somebody that was like, oh, it's, first they thought it was bullshit. Then they decided that, once they actually tested him and saw that he was proving this stuff, then they realized, wow, this isn't bullshit. But then they thought it was maybe something specific to him. So then he taught classes and taught other students how to do the same thing. So it's like a lot of stuff. It's just like, I feel like anything that's against the grain, the initial reaction is, it must be bullshit because I would have heard of it, or a doctor would have recommended it, or something like that. Do you kind of find that to be true?
Yes, absolutely. It's the skeptics, and in a world right now where we see a lot of people online saying, "Oh, be positive, be this, be that," but then when you look behind a lot of what drives the science, it's the skeptics, and I'm a glass half full guy. I mean, I'm optimistic overall, but when you have people that are very into being skeptics, they want to put everything down. It's like the idea you are who you surround yourself with. If you're around a bunch of negative people, you're probably going to be negative. You're around a bunch of positive people, you're about to be positive. You're bound to be positive. But, a lot of the skeptics are very negative. I wouldn't want to hang out with them. I mean, everything I say, they're going to question to the point of, like, oh, well, come on, you got to relax. Like we could at least have some common sense here too.
Well, isn't it similar to kind of like the atheists and the spiritual religious people? Like the atheists critique the religious people because they're extremists, right? Because they and then next thing you know, you just basically did the same thing. You become the extremist where you're trying to debunk everything. You're not open-minded anymore. So in other words, you leave one group to join another group, but you think your group has it figured out. But yet you're critiquing the other group because you think they don't have it all figured out. And it's same thing with debunkers. Like debunkers, it's like, conspiracy theorists think everything is a conspiracy theory. And it's like, well, don't debunkers also think everything can be debunked? Like, so it's the
that's
same
a good
thing,
point.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a good point. And it's really like one of the things that I realized throughout this whole Corona thing is how fear is contagious, Right. And fear might be more contagious than the coronavirus. And I underestimated the power of fear. I mean, it's been unbelievable to see what's really happened with this. And it just, it reminds me too, getting into like, you look at those that believe in climate change or don't. If you don't, you're a climate denier. If you do, that you're on that side. But if you question the climate change that's going on, and not as a question, like I absolutely believe in climate change. I absolutely believe that humans are one of the main causes of it. But I do ask, like, to what degree? And I think that we should really focus in on that. Does that make me a denier? No, I'm just kind of questioning trying to get a better understanding because I haven't gotten solid answers. But, I would probably be labeled a climate denier by a lot of those people. Same thing with this whole Corona thing. And then by the skeptics, by the way, the skeptics are the anti-climate deniers. So, the whole coronavirus thing, if you question this thing as it's going on, and not as in we know it's deadly. We know that that there's a lot of issues surrounding it. But is the response that we're doing the right response? And is it actually going to cause more damage than good in the end? Are more people going to die from the poverty that the coronavirus causes than the actual disease? Just asking those questions publicly, you might get attacked. It's either one or the other. It's like, no, let's try to be in the middle and look at every side. And I think that in a lot of ways, that's actually what's happened with mainstream science. They want to debunk you so quick, and they want to just blast you so quick. And we're seeing it firsthand. President Trump like I'm not getting into politics per se, but what he is going, like I'm watching him and he'll say something and you'll see it kind of just like people have the questions on the hydroxychloroquine and as well they should. But what he's saying is not that it works. He's saying that people should possibly give it a try. But what they're hearing him say is that he's promoting this drug as something that is a cure. I mean, how many times have I heard that? Like that's not at all what I'm saying with Gerson therapy or with actually a lot of our other treatments that I think are more powerful than Gerson therapy. I still don't go that far, but there are options and they have been shown anecdotally to work, but the fear of it not working the way he thinks it possibly could, the media thinks that, or the fear of the side effects, because they do know that actually if someone has a prolonged QT ratio, it can be dangerous to their heart. But every doctor knows that. Every doctor knows that. So the doctors need to make sure that you probably do an EKG before you take it or whatever they tell them to do. But point being, it's that fear that they use to drive a wedge in between to where you're either one side or the other, and you can no longer be kind of down the middle.
Yeah, well, that old movie Contagion, I think the theme for it, or it was on the poster. I think it was nothing spreads faster than fear, and you see it now. And I'm like you. I try to be optimistic on things. I try to look at things from all perspectives. I mean, I love having my ideas challenged because it forces me to have to reevaluate where I stand, why I believe something, the origins of my beliefs. And I think that's super important because I think a lot of times people just join a team and they believe something and they don't really kind of retrace their steps on how did I get here? Was it logical thinking? Was it emotional? Was it, how did I get to where I am? And so I love having people on that I agree with, of course, because I have them on because there's something that I think is interesting that's worth discussing and sharing. But also I love having discussions on things that we don't agree on because it forces me to, because there's been times where, I feel like I stand on, a pretty solid ground on this opinion, and then somebody challenges it and I'm like, wait, I haven't really thought this out that well, So yeah. I think it's super important. But unfortunately, so many of us we have these tribal instincts that you join a team, you defend it till the end of time, regardless of anything else. And it just causes this. I mean, I saw it over and over again. I remember during the last election, if I wrote something or shared an article about like Hillary corruption or conspiracies, then I get attacked by the Trump lovers. If I wrote something that was and vice versa. So it would be like, I would get attacked by the Hillary supporters. If I wrote anything negative about Hillary, I get attacked by the Trump supporters. And I'm like, I'm not telling you I'm for one or the other. I'm just saying that these people are flawed. Here are some of their flaws. Sure. Take these things in consideration when you're making your decisions. So that's, and same thing with the coronavirus. I'm constantly getting in not debates, but I try to be super polite. And most of the time, if you have the time to actually have these long drawn out conversations on social media, most of the time when you're sharing information, you can get people to come around. And all I'm doing is asking questions, like you said. And asking the question has become tyranny. It has become, I mean, you look at London Real. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on with London Real. It's a podcast out of London. But Brian Rose has actually been on the Rogan podcast years ago. And he has a pretty popular podcast. And he had David Icke on like 2 weeks ago. And then I don't know if you're familiar with David Icke, but he's kind of like known to be like a conspiracy theorist in the UK. And then they had him on again because it was such a popular hit for his take on the coronavirus. Well, they had him on. They streamed it live. I believe it was if I'm pretty sure I read that it was a second, or Brian Rose said this, the host said that it was a second most viewed stream live show ever in the history of YouTube, which is crazy. Yeah. So that's how big this was, right? They pulled it. They ended up pulling the video online. And he was like, I'm a business partner with YouTube. I've been on here for 8 years. And he's like, I've made them money. They've made me money, this and that. And he's like, with no reason, no justification, they just pull it. And he's like, it's an old man who's just asking questions. He's not telling people to be violent. He's not telling people he's just asking questions. And he's like, and they pulled it. And it's that type of stuff that makes people believe like, okay, maybe there's a bigger agenda. Maybe there's more to the story. Because even when in America, when you had the first 50, 60, 70 deaths, like you were saying, I'm one of those optimistic people. So I'm like, okay, well, let me look for some optimistic information on these deaths. How old were they? Did they have pre-existing conditions? And nobody was reporting that. They're only reporting cases and deaths, and they weren't telling you that, especially the initial deaths, that the majority of them weren't just in one state, but they were in one nursing home in Washington State. Like, I'm like, you don't think for the sake of people's sanity, like, and just giving them a little bit of optimistic news, like, you don't think that's important? Same thing with this soccer player that passed, or soccer coach who passed away, in a Spanish soccer coach. He was 21, and they're like, oh, look, it's killing young people. He had like aggressive cancer. Like, and when you read the article, you're like, oh crap, he had leukemia. Like, he had aggressive forms of leukemia. Like, why isn't that important news to tell people? And it's like, I think that's what causes the censorship, the fact that it's no different than, like, I live in Massachusetts, near Springfield, Mass, kind of, and when there's a snowstorm, the news will just keep talking about this upcoming snowstorm, and everybody want to keep watching because they're like, oh shit, there's going to be snow. It's going to be snow. So it's like, it's almost the same type of technique where just like keep people scared, keep people watching by only showing them the negative, So, and so I'm with you on that. I think it's a huge issue, the way the media is reporting on this.
Well, yeah, what you're saying, there's so much truth, like going through the numbers, like, every time you see the numbers rising right now, what people need to realize is they're just testing more people. I mean, there's estimates between 10 and 50 times as many people have it that have tested positive, because and the virus is widely out there. But what would that mean? That would mean that the mortality rate is actually much lower. I mean, the Oxford study is showing between 0.1 and 0.26%. So equal or 2.6 times more deadly than the flu. Some other good ones have been coming out, looking at 0.5 to 0.7 range. And so it's much lower than what was initially being projected. You can't even look at the mortality rate based off of the numbers that we see. That's not accurate at all. I mean, it's how many people actually have it, how many people haven't been tested. Those are the numbers that we should be looking at. If people are really afraid of dying of this, I can't imagine. Think about this. We have a stage 4 cancer patient, and I got a 99.5% chance of curing them. Like, I'm feeling great every time we go into that one. Like, every single time. I mean, like, oh man. But I mean, of course, we don't have near that. We don't have near that. If we're batting 20% stage 4 solid tumor cancer, we're doing good. 5-year survival on that. But 99.5. I mean, we would be Nobel Prize winners, greatest humans in the history of the world type stuff if we were able to do that. And so these are, people are so afraid right now of something that is likely not going to kill them. And, sure, could it happen to you or I? Absolutely. It could happen to any of us. And that's a reality. Like, yeah, sure, it could happen. But the odds are well in our favor. They're well in our favor. We should be safe. We should be responsible. We should be as healthy as we possibly can. I mean, if you look at a lot of these pre-existing conditions, heart disease, diabetes that are killing the people, the combination, those are all in many ways preventable. Not always, but in many ways preventable. So, personal responsibility, time to get in shape. We're a month into this. What have you been doing for the last month? If you're really worried about dying, like, get some exercise, get on a good diet. So, but the fear has been what you're saying about the nursing home. How many of those people would have died in the next 3 months anyway? That's a great question. And I don't see a lot of people asking those questions. And sometimes if you do ask those questions, people say that you're insensitive, or you're you're out of touch, or you're trying to just kill people, or you just think that we should all go back to work at the same time. It's like, no. I'm just trying to have listen, if you look at unemployment, how much mortality or death does unemployment cause? I've read some study, I think for every 1%, there's 4,500 deaths a year. So if we get up to 30%, I mean, we're already above where the new coronavirus is going to be. I mean, you're more likely to, you're like 72% more likely to die from the ages of 18 to 40 if you don't have a job than if you do have a job. I mean, those are real numbers that we should be taking into account. So, I think it's important to look at all sides and not just throw stones at people that have differences with us, and try to build bridges. I always say build bridges instead of walls right now. We need to work together But we need to be giving real information so people don't just panic. And the mental health aspect of this could be horrible. Actually, it's going to be. I don't see a way out of it at this point. Suicides, domestic violence, child abuse, all these things are unintended consequences of a quick forced shutdown.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think you just shared actually an article on your Facebook today, right, about the unemployment, how many people it kills. It was you or somebody, yeah, that I saw it.
Yeah, I mentioned so I didn't share the article, but I mentioned that for every 1% unemployment, I believe it's 4,500 people die, and that's extreme when you start adding 27 times. Let's say right now it was at 3% before this started, right? So let's say you add 27%. What's 27 times 4,500? I mean, we got to take those numbers into consideration, and I don't know if everybody's thinking like that, but that's where I'm at.
Well, there's a lot of other questions like the tests. I mean, there's a contaminated test that went to the UK. There's a bunch of COVID-19 tests that they found were contaminated with COVID-19. I mean, you can go on the COVID-19 testing Wikipedia, and and you go to accuracy, that section. They'll tell you how some of these tests are 30% accurate, and some tests they think they gave false. So it's even the data that they're using to come up with these numbers can be questioned. And then you look at how many of these deaths are being considered COVID-19 deaths, and it could be just for the basic coronavirus. It could be for, there's stories about the CDC saying that even if you're assuming it's the coronavirus, you can count it. So you want to add?
No, that's it. That's actually keep going. You're right.
No. So you would you have seen the same type of stuff, right?
Oh yeah, that's what they actually in the United States especially, they're counting any death that somebody tests positive for the coronavirus as a coronavirus death. They're not taking into consideration right now whether they have cancer, whether they have heart disease, whether they have diabetes. It's all being classified as coronavirus. And then my understanding is they're going to go back though and change it all. But people should at least know that as these numbers are going forward. There's a lot of that going on right now. A lot of things are being categorized as coronavirus deaths where, just like the nursing home, it probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Fauci, I mean, he was a part of the task force during the AIDS epidemic where they estimated millions and millions of deaths. And then he said afterwards, he's like, yeah, we're way off, but at least it got people scared and took the thing seriously. So it's probably could be doing the same thing now. I mean, he has said, and that's the thing, I don't know if people actually watch these press conferences, because in many cases, Dr. Birx has said during these press conferences, and that's the thing, most people aren't watching the press conferences because they are drawn out and they're long. They're watching the media's interpretation of what they said and little snippets, which mean they have agendas, and either, like you said, they're either pro-Trump or anti-Trump, and they're going to critique everything he does. I mean, he got critiqued for not wearing a mask the other day. He's got critiqued, like you said, for saying that this drug might help some people. People should entertain the idea. And I'm not for or anti-Trump. I'm just saying that let's just be fair and honest. If you're going to critique him for those little things, then it's obvious that you're just nitpicking things and you're not trying to spread truth or get to any real answers. And that's what really bothers me, is people aren't seeing through that bullshit, and they're falling for it. I mean, I'll have conversations with people and they're just repeating what they're saying on what they heard on the news. I'm like, you're just repeating the same stuff. I'm like, there's so much inconsistency. I'm like, the death rate is based on what? I mean, Dr. Fauci himself has said graphs and all this stuff is only as good as the assumptions. And information you put in there, so you can kind of get what you want. And so it's and then you look at, to me, how much do you think it is that, because I mean, you obviously work at a hospital, you're connected to people who are dying every day or are fighting for their lives. How many people are just naive that every single day people are dying? I almost feel oh, did you hear there's another death, of the coronavirus here, and another death? I'm like, you do realize people were dying every day prior to this, right? 20,000 people died of hunger every single day. And that could have been prevented. I'm like, all we have to do is feed them. We don't have to test them. We don't have to find a cure or a treatment. We just give them food. And I'm like, so why aren't we coming together to stop hunger? Why aren't we coming together like Justin Wren, who's been on the show, to get people clean water? Why isn't these are simple solutions that are helping people who can honestly help people and seem much easier to fix, especially if the global community come together, than this, where there's so many question marks and people are questioning, why is it spreading? Why is it it's spreading faster and drier temperature and all, like, there's all these question marks, and I'm like, there's every day people die of the flu. If the media reported on it every single day, one more person died of the flu in Minnesota today, one more person, I'm like, it would also seem like a huge deal. It would also be scaring the crap out of us. But the truth is, the 15 to 20 or whatever thousand people who die of the flu every day or every year, nobody cares about them. Apparently, we only care if you die of the coronavirus.
Yeah, no, every time somebody dies right now, first thought is, this is my first, I'm like, oh, what if it's coronavirus? That's where I'm at right now. But to your point, just imagine, like last year, about 650,000 people died in the United States of heart disease, about 600,000 died of cancer. Number 3 is a very controversial one. This is not to knock hospitals. I own a hospital, but this is just the numbers: 250,000 to 440,000 die of hospital errors or, doctor errors. So those are pretty high numbers. But yeah, just imagine every single time a person died of cancer, it was headlines on the news. Every single time somebody dies of heart, headlines. And those are largely, not cancer isn't largely preventable, but heart disease is largely preventable. Diabetes, obviously, largely preventable. A lot of these things are largely preventable. So, if you put that in context, are we overreacting every time somebody dies of, this new coronavirus? And, to me, I think the answer is probably yes. I do believe the answer is yes. But, going back to that fear thing, when this started, I dismissed it in the sense that I went through the data. I'm like, you know what? It's not that, it's not that bad. We're going to be okay. It might need to, have extra ventilators, which you're finding, by the way, might not be the right treatment. But so I went through it, and then, but I was trying to calm my friends and family, and then what was going on, it's like, we need calm right now. And then it just kind of started building, and these headlines, I noticed everybody reading just the headlines, but not actually reading the article, not reading the story, not reading actually the study that they're citing, and I would say 95% of the time, the headline didn't match what was really going on. And, you're talking about Fauci in these conferences. I've listened to what he said, and he's been taken out of context so many times. He'll say, hey, I don't think you can go with this number. So if I'm going to guess, it'll be this, but you can't really go with it. And they'll put Fauci says it's me, and it's dishonest, really. It's just very dishonest. And it's preying on people's fear. And what I think is happening is the media has realized the power of fear, and they are scaring the hell out of people right now. People are worried about dying of this that are, 18 to 40 years old, that are in shape with no pre-existing conditions. Like, you should worry about some other things, like not this. Yeah, you can get it. You might get really sick, but you're really, you're probably in the 0.1 category. 99.9% you're good. So is that something that should, occupy our minds? And, and you got to think the damage that fear causes too. Fear likely causes disease. There's got to be a tie-in somewhere. It needs to be more studied, of course, but fear is crippling. So, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing society crippled. It's weird even going out right now. I've left the house like once in 10 days, went to Kroger's, and I'm a little nervous walking by people. This is me, logical, but still, you think about this. Like, the one thing that at least everybody should be able to agree upon is things have changed. Things have changed. It's gotten something's changed out there. And, to me, fear probably has taken over. That's the big change. And how do we bring people back to having faith, in humanity and their fellow man, and not letting fear run their lives? Who would think it's a good idea to have fear run their life? That is what we're living out of fear right now. And so I think that we've got to start taking the baby steps and start moving towards a direction that acknowledges something has changed and, allows us to adapt and move on from that change as fast as possible.
Well, you look at dictatorships and communist countries, I was born in Portugal, and this was before even my parents' time. But I believe when my grandparents were alive, Salazar was the dictator there. And I remember asking my parents, I'm like, hey, do you ever hear stories about how like you couldn't get together in groups? And they grew up on a farm in northern Portugal, close to Spain, and it was kind of not really an issue there. But in the cities, like groups of people couldn't come together because the dictator Salazar thought that you were putting together a protest or you're being anti-government, maybe putting together a rally or something. And I almost see that now where just like people are afraid of coming together. Like I've had people over my house. I've had friends come over. We've had, I know you did a podcast on whiskey not too long ago. I'm also a big bourbon guy. I did a whole podcast on, I love bourbon, and I did a whole podcast with, what's his name? Masterson Brown. He did a documentary. It was on Amazon Prime called History Distilled, and it was a great documentary on the history of bourbon. And that's what I love about bourbon. I love the history of it. I love obviously the way it tastes, it looks, everything about it is really cool. And so I have people over. We drink, we conversate, we hang out, and so many people the next day. Everybody who was over text messaging, they're like, thank you so much for being willing to have people over your house, because I so needed that. I needed just to be around other people and talk and just hang out. Nothing crazy. We just sat around. Actually, I got the WWE app for my kids so they could watch old stuff. So we were going back and watching stuff that, when we used to watch back as kids. We're like, hey, remember that Shawn Michael Undertaker fight and, whatever. And we just had a blast. And like everybody felt better just from being together. But what I'm getting off track, which I normally do. So just bear with me. But the thing is that there was a sense of like, hey, don't tell anybody. Like, hey, like I don't want to, I don't care, but I know there's going to be some public shaming if they find out we're getting together. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, but it's true. I understood. I'm like, don't worry. I won't put it on my Instagram story. I won't take any pictures. And it almost seems like we're like, Nazi Germany, and we're hiding out because we don't want the Nazis to find us. It's like, don't let everybody know we're having fun. It's like, it's so it like, and it's like that boiling frog metaphor. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where you put the frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cold water and slowly start heating it, next thing you know, it's in boiling water and it never knew. And it's like the same thing. Like if you just completely take away our rights and you take away our freedoms and our pleasures in life right away, like all at one time, we notice. But if we slowly start saying, hey, no more than 100 people get together. Oh, now no more than 50. Now no more than 10. Now don't get together with anybody. And if you do, stay 6 feet away. Like it just happened like little by little. We're just like, holy shit, like people aren't stopping and looking around and being like, what did I just accept? And I think that's scary.
No, absolutely. It's what you're saying about the public shaming. I was actually talking about this last week, and that we're going to be getting to a point where people are shamed for being around other people. I mean, that's happening now, but it's going to be a thing. The next debate that we're going to have in society is going to be, what are you allowed to do? How many people are you allowed to hang out with? What's right? Can you touch? Can you shake hands? And people are going to be, I mean, it's going to be vicious, I believe. I think it's going to be a thing. And guys like you and I are like, this is, stupid. But, people are going to be highly judgmental. You're going to be either a good person or a bad person to them based off of your views on social distancing. It's insane in many ways. It's insane. The same people there were a lot of people that were screaming out, oh, you should just stay at home. And I'm like, and they were saying, if you don't stay at home, you're just being selfish and all these things. And this is before a lot of the stuff was known. This is before a lot of businesses were closed. They were saying that. And that was when the panic was coming on. And I was just thinking, if they end up winning, like this is going to be a nightmare for our country. We're going to shut everything down and sure enough, it just happened. So, we saw the public shaming 3-4 weeks ago before everything was really shut down. And now it's getting to a point where even going back into society, they're not even thinking about all the mental health issues that this is causing. They're not thinking of, the unintended consequences of the shutdown, but it's going to be a thing. And it's probably going to be a left and right thing. It's probably going to be a Republican and Democrat thing. Unfortunately, it's, it's going to be one of those things where even being down the middle, if you think this way, it's like you're on this side. So I think we got to be careful. I think that we need to have these conversations just to where people kind of see what's really going on. I mean, all of this, Ricky, talking to you here, you've been laying things out like you've been predicting them to happen. Like this happens, this happens, this happens. Same thing here, man. It's been like, it's pretty easy to see what's going on. I mean, this is not, but a lot of people aren't hearing this and they're not thinking that way. So I think it's important, having these conversations openly, because people can realize that we're not really picking a side. We're just like, speaking the truth from our perspective.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's the most dangerous, is the fact that just asking questions has become, controversial. To me, like that's crazy. I mean, first of all, I've said this over and over again. I'm like, listen, the government has lied itself into wars. Corporations have lied itself into putting chemicals in your food that are unsafe. I'm like, the elite, the higher ups, it doesn't matter if it's government, corporations, whoever it may be, there's corruption everywhere, and they're going to find ways to benefit. I mean, you look after September 11th, people were emotional. What happens? Like, they're like, oh, this is a great time. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with PNAC, the Project for New American Century, but they already had this idea that they needed to get in the Middle East, and there's these countries that they wanted to invade. So September 11th, people were emotional. You could basically just say, let's invade any country. And if you told the people that, like, it's going to make us safer, everybody's afraid, so just trust us, this is going to make you safer, people were just all for it. And that's what happened. We got lied into a war that bunch of corporations made tons of money, and bunch of lives were lost because of it and ruined. I mean, countries that are, Libya is still a mess. Iraq is still a mess. I mean, ISIS, was created because of the downfall of Iraq. And so all this stuff, and it's like, so you think those same people that and they use the anthrax stuff, right? I mean, I've had Robbie Martins on, who is the brother of Abby Martin. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's independent.
Oh yeah, for RT.
Yeah. She used to work for RT, and now she has a great show called Empire Files. But he did a great documentary on American anthrax and all the inconsistencies with, like, how the government was kind of using that to help us add on to the fear of September 11th and terrorism. And they were using that way, even though, there's evidence that could have came from a government lab and all this stuff, but it just kept adding to it. And then, look at other techniques they use, like code orange, code red, code orange, code red. And they were using, we never heard of that again. Once they got what they wanted, and we're in Iraq and we're in Afghanistan and we're all on board, you didn't hear about that anymore. All of a sudden, terrorism just disappeared, and it was, so it's like those same people don't disappear. Like the advisors, the cabinets. I mean, these are all similar people who are connected to similar organizations or think tanks. And so we have to be weary. We can't, to me, it's like when we've been lied to this many times, you're guilty until proven innocent. And, I think the most natural thing is ask questions, and then now you have to prove to be that you're being honest. It's not the other way around. It's not like, like I tell people all the time, like, if you keep catching your girlfriend cheating on you, next time something shady happens, are you going to assume she's being honest this time, or are you going to assume she's cheating on you? I'm like, well, that's how the government is. I'm like, you should kind of treat it the same way. Like, assume they're lying to you because they have. It's not a assumption that's completely off base. Like, you have reason to believe they're lying to you, and then make them prove themselves. But so it is one of those things where just like the people who are so willing to kind of get, and then the big thing too is like the greater good. They make you feel guilty about, like, so this is kind of similar to September 11th, where, like, if you're anti-war, they made you out to be anti-military and you're
anti-American.
Not patriotic. Yeah, so now it's the same thing. If you're anti whatever the narrative is, the mainstream narrative, you're anti first responders, you're anti nurses who are out there, you're anti old people, right? And it's like, I was born in a country that you take care of your elderly. I came to a country that you throw your elderly in a nursing home because I'm too busy pursuing my career and I don't have time for my parents. So F it, put them in a nursing home. I don't want to take care of them anymore. So it's like, wait, nobody gave a shit about old people until now. All of a sudden, it's like we're willing to stop everything for old people. I'm like, that seems kind of weird.
Yeah, no, it's strange. With the color thing, we were just talking about this the other night. The threat orange, or threat level orange or red. I think that's probably what's going to happen with the coronavirus thing. I think there's going to be like alerts out there, saying what level it is. Oh, you're safe to go out, and people are going to be, because right now you have to think like people are kind of like getting in line. People are getting in line. In many ways, I've gotten in line. I have to acknowledge, as far as I've stayed at home. I haven't been out of the house, well, except once in 10 days. And I guess my overall belief of the whole social distancing thing is like, for now, we've committed this far. I think when you get back to work as soon as possible, definitely feeling the pain financially and all these things, but it'd be bad to go back now if this is what's actually causing the decline, which in the future we might see that the social distancing actually wasn't the thing. That said, the next steps that we have are going to be, or that we do, are going to be key to how we survive as a society ultimately. And, if they are looking to get us in line and to do whatever they say, whenever they say it, we have to understand the steps. One is going to be that color code thing. Two, recognizing the fact that they're putting, if we're not following their narrative, like you said, they're putting us against the nurses, not being for nurses, for doctors, for old people, for either whatever. It's causing divide. You're either this or that, when it's not that. The reality is most people are probably in the middle, So, it is. Is there another agenda? I don't think guys like Fauci have an agenda. Why? Well, so, two of the scientists that I work with, they know him pretty well, and they say he's an honest guy, doing his best, and they believe in him, and those are my friends that believe in him. So of course, that's going to have an effect on what I think, but I've also had a lot of experience working with Big Pharma, for instance. I work pretty close with Big Pharma. My experience, and most of them are not bad dudes. They're just like regular guys like you or I, trying to do the best they can within the system that they're working in. So they got the system. System's not perfect. A lot of them can acknowledge the system's jacked up. Like, we're trying to fix the system. But, point being, I do question the people at the top. I don't think Fauci, for instance, would be a person at the top, not in making policy and pushing things, but, in the information coming in from China. Like, it's obvious the Chinese government is lying about this whole thing in some way, whatever the lie is. It's obvious. When did they really know about it? How did we not really know about what was going on? I mean, one big aha moment I've had is with the World Health Organization. On January 14th, they tweeted out that there was no human-to-human spreading of this. That's a lie. They said that the Chinese government told them that. Like, we knew well before that. So now I'm thinking, well, what is the World Health Organization? You don't see them a whole lot at all in the discussions with our government anymore. At first, it was like, oh, the World Health Organization, all this. But there is definitely something weird going on. There's definitely a cover-up coming from China in some way. And, the polarization, there's a split in America. I mean, if I were the Chinese government, I was trying to take out the United States without dropping a bomb. I mean, there's nothing more perfect than this little coronavirus. Something that's not that deadly, that spreads super easily, that's going to cause panic in a divided country. I mean, it's a perfect time to take us out. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying it's a real possibility. It would make a lot of sense. A lot of the conspiracies I see online, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but nothing would surprise me at this point. I mean, I'm kind of open to most of them. I'm kind of like, yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the mainstream view is, but you got to think I'm an idiot if you're to convince me that China did not cover this thing up.
Well, the initial whistleblowers went missing or found dead. Like the initial doctors went missing. The numbers are really low. I mean, even like Russia, for example, I think they're in still double digits of deaths, which is unusual, because I'm like, wait, they're closer to China than we are. It's like, how come their numbers are so low? There's so much. That's the thing. There's so much inconsistency. There's so much that doesn't make sense, that, like you said, I'm kind of open to all ideas. I mean, the Gates Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, like all the links to them. I mean, them pushing vaccines forever, and then their links to Big Pharma, their links to the WHO. They're one of the biggest funders of the WHO. I mean, Trump has said in one of the recent press conferences how like he was basically sounding like you saying he's like, we give them all this money and they're giving us bad information. Like that's the like we have to question that. We have to, figure out why the hell are we giving them all this money to give us good information and yet we're getting bad information. So like they don't deserve the money we're giving them, or is there another agenda? Because China, obviously they're really close with China. And so yeah, there's a lot. That's the thing. Like these type of events. I mean, it's same thing with the Jeffrey Epstein story, right? Like a lot of things that didn't seem possible. Like I remember having this guy Nick Bryan years ago. He's the author of this book called The Franklin Scandal about this human trafficking ring and all this stuff. And I remember talking to people about it, and they're like, "Wait, that sounds fucking crazy." And I'm like, "It does," until you look into it and you realize. And now I sound like Eddie Bravo. Look into it. If you look into it and you realize like, oh shit, there's some truth to this. And then when the Jeffrey Epstein thing happened. When that story became public, and it's somebody that a lot of people in the alternative media have been talking about, like myself, forever. Like, why isn't this guy locked up? But look at all the things he's been alleged to do. Look at all the people he's linked to, like Bill Gates, the Clintons, all these people. And then it's like even the most skeptical people. I heard saying, okay, there's definitely some fuckery. There's definitely something going on here that doesn't make sense. Like this is crazy. And yet now we're like, no, nothing more conspiratorial could be happening. It's like you're talking about a guy that was linked to the elite in science, the elite in politics, in Hollywood. I mean, he was linked to Weinstein. I mean, and we're not even looking for Maxwell anymore. His handler, Ghislaine
Where's she at?
Yeah, nobody even cares. So it's like, like this guy was he had his own island. He's linked to pedophilia, human trafficking, like the darkest of things that seem like could only be something out of a horror movie seem to be reality. And yet like thinking some people could fudge some numbers to get some outcome they wanted. It's too hard to believe. It's like, no, I mean, it's not that hard to believe. I mean, you look at like the Yellow Vest movement in France. You look at like the protests in China, in Hong Kong. Like this is if you wanted to fudge some numbers to kind of justify putting an end to some of those protests, now wouldn't be a bad time to do it, And then obviously there's the lab in Wuhan that people are talking about, biological tests were going on there. And that we know for a fact. I had a scientist on not too long ago, I believe it was at the end of last year, who wrote the book Bitten, which is about her. She got Lyme disease, and then she got really obsessed with like figuring out where did it come from, learning everything about it. And then she got that rabbit hole led her to like the history of biological warfare. And so without a doubt, like we know people have messed with it. People, governments are experimenting with it, doing tests with it. So I'm with you. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm open to all possibilities. Like there's nothing that seems too crazy for me to believe, because when you see that it's so obvious that there's a agenda being pushed in regard, I mean, look at the stimulus package. Boeing is getting tons of money. All these big corporations are getting money. It seems very similar to the 2008 bailout, where just like these banks are too big to fail, but yet we give them all this taxpayer money. So people who are losing their houses, but yet we give all this money to big banks, and then the CEOs are still getting bonuses, paid vacations, and it's like, wait, if your business was almost about to shut down, maybe you didn't do a good job as a CEO and you don't deserve that bonus, but they got them anyway. So it's like you see a similar thing now where just like this, you see software being talked about like being able to track people who have the coronavirus. Another great way of tracking people. You're looking at big corporations getting money. So it seems like a lot hospitals that might not even need the respirators are asking for more of them because it's free federal money and resources. Why not? So it's like I kind of see where there's a lot of people who can benefit from pushing this narrative and pushing this just scaring the shit out of people.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that can benefit from it. And the whole Epstein thing with going back to Epstein, I mean, the idea that he could commit suicide in in his jail cell. And, who knows if he was murdered or whatever, but, that we can't think there's something really weird going on in a cover up, and if we do, we're conspiracy theorists. Like that's a strange thing. We were lied to into going into a war. There were supposed to be weapons of mass destruction. Where are they at? We've been lied to over and over again. And so I think it's healthy to question. I think it's also, whenever you're following the numbers through this data, like, the last month, I've known that it's a bunch of lies going up there because the headline says one thing and the article says another, and the studies even go deeper. So you don't in many ways have to go farther than the headline, or rather, in many ways, people don't go further than the headline. But all you got to do is read the article, and it's likely different, and then read the study, and then you really get full context. But it's strange, and right now our country is so divided. It's sad. And you're not allowed in many ways to have conversations that you want to have. Let's say you got a good heart and you love people and you're just trying to do good, but hey, let's talk through this. This doesn't make sense. All of a sudden you're not being, you're not nice or politically correct, or you can't talk about this. You're not being sensitive. And, it's all these things that it's hard to know how to act now in society to where people don't just, attack you. A lot of what's been going on with the coronavirus stuff, I'm careful in my interviews in general because everything I've said in this, I don't mind saying, but I do work with a lot of very high up people, and we have good conversations, open conversations. They know where I stand, but if I'm doing an interview with somebody that's, on, like, for instance, the other day I was interviewing the head of the Davidson County Coronavirus Task Force. And, I wanted to make sure that he knows I'm on his side. But I had to be careful there in how I ask questions because, it could be deemed as I'm trying to, I would be labeled a conspiracy theorist on this stuff when I'm just really trying to get information out. But that's not his fault. That's society. That's where we've kind of come as a society. So ultimately, in a way, I don't get to ask all the questions that I want to ask, because I don't want to come across as, going against against him. But, and these are human problems, I guess is what I'm saying. This is something that we've all got to kind of work together to fix, because, having open conversations, having, and not being afraid of seeming one way that you're not being afraid of being mischaracterized in your opinion. It's really hard when you do a lot of interviews or you're interviewing people and, you just want to tell the truth and ask the questions that are interesting to you that you think people should know, but you're not allowed to ask those questions.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. I mean, that's where, like, the fact that I'm just a construction worker as my full-time job, like, I don't have anybody that I have to worry about looking at me differently or getting fired. We have like a small little family business. We do some concrete work, some blacktop work, stuff like that, some road construction, and small little business. And I'm always like, it kind of benefits me in this aspect because I'm not really afraid of getting fired. I'm not worried about somebody pigeonholing me into or saying that I have a political view they disagree with, and then they don't want to do business with me or whatever. So it's just one of those things where I kind of have the freedom to have these conversations. But I'm also I have people from all different perspectives on. I've had libertarians on. I've had, I remember I was just talking about this with a past guest about how they were listening to Scott Horton from antiwar.com. He's a radio host from Texas, and he's also a very anti-war libertarian. And then the next show I had Professor Richard Wolff on, who's a historian in Marxism and socialism, and it's just like libertarian socialism, and it's like I'm not married to any idea. I want to explore these ideas because I want to be able to kind of figure out where I stand, and the more information I take in, the better I can kind of mold my perspectives. And doing your podcast, I'm sure you would agree with me. Like, it's not just a journey for the listener, while you're having these conversations in regards to them learning something and exploring new ideas. But you're also going through the same process during the conversations. You're also exploring new ideas and kind of figuring out where you stand and what makes the most sense or whatnot. Correct?
Oh no, absolutely. That's the whole. We're all learning. We're all learning, and that's the difficulty of it, because, like I said, as good people, as just trying to being curious people wanting to ask these questions, it can seem sometimes divisive in the way society is now, when it's not. We're just trying to learn together. So, with that interview the other day, he was actually a really good guy. And, it was, I kind of talked to him beforehand. Hey, I'm going to ask these questions this way, but just to kind of prepare him, because he probably hadn't, if I didn't, then he's not normally asked those questions. But, he was very open and honest, and it turned out well. But it's interesting that we have to do that now, and depending on the interview, of course. But, it's interesting that you kind of have to do that now because of how it can be perceived. And society it's brutal right now. You either believe in one thing or the other. And if you believe in this, you're bad, and you believe in this, you're good. And it's like, no, like you're talking about the two different guests you had, the libertarian and the communist, like opposite sides, but you can have a conversation. You might be friends with both of them. I mean, Jeff Munson, an old MMA fighter. He's living in Russia now. I love Jeff. He's been a friend for years. He's communist guy. I mean, Jeff and I cannot, we don't agree on most things political, but he's still my friend, and he's hilarious. We've been friends for years. So, point being, you can have different views and still, be friends. And I think a lot of times people have forgot that. I saw yesterday this girl I went to high school with on Facebook. She's like, if you still support Trump, unfriend me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? And you see that a lot, but, and then I saw in her comments, she was giving her reasons why. And it's just so righteous. It's just so righteous. I have a completely different point of view than her. I'm not even this giant Trump supporter, by the way, but I have a completely different point of view than her. So I guess we can't be friends because of that. So that's what I think, the conversation that we got to bring it back and say, no, we can be friends. Hey, this is what kind of society is teaching you. We can be friends. We should be friends. We should be friends with as many people as we possibly can, because when you cut through all the bullshit, in reality, we have a lot more in common than we have against each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, we got so much more in common. We love our families. We want to be loved. All these things that are true humans. So, yeah, it's just got to bring it back.
Yeah, it reminds me of I had a guest some years ago, Mariana Van Zeller, who's a Portuguese journalist who did some shows on, I think, Nat Geo and Discovery. Mm-hmm. And she had a show called Breaking Borders, where she would take people from two sides of a debate. She would get a Texan who hates immigrants, and then an immigrant, and she would travel around the world with this world famous chef. I forget what his name is, and the agreement is, we're going to cook you the most fabulous dinner ever, and all we ask you to do is sit at this table with this other person you disagree with. And you notice, when they're eating, they're drinking, they could talk about tons of different stuff and have a blast, and food and alcohol or drinking, whatever brought people together. And you realize, holy shit, the majority of us can sit, if we were at a table together enjoying, food and some company, we're not that different, and I think it was a example of how you put people together in the same place. And that's the thing about the internet too. It almost makes it too easy for people to be assholes. It's if you were face to face with this person and you got talking about something else, and you could humanize the person, instead of being just this is this person who I disagree with. And then if you get to know who they are, you get to know their family, you realize, oh, this person isn't evil. He's not anti my beliefs. He just has a different perspective on things. And so I think that's super important. I mean, I give Dana White, talking about MMA, I give Dana White tons of credit for going through the incredible headaches of putting together a UFC event on the 18th. My birthday is actually the 19th, and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to be quarantined. And I was like, I'm a big Ferguson fan. I think he probably is the guy who can really beat Khabib. He has no flaw in his game. I'm a big fan of. I think he's a little weird, but I'm a big fan of his fighting style. And I was so disappointed when they start canceling stuff. But then when Dana White's like, fuck it, people need something, and it's almost like he the thing that people dislike about him sometimes, the I don't give a fuck personality, is what makes him perfect for this scenario, because he's like, I don't care that people are gonna get mad at me. I don't care that I'm gonna get some backlash for putting this on. People need something that feels normal, and it's almost like he understood the psychology of humans better than most people, because I saw a recent interview with him. He's like people are going to go crazy. People are losing their mind, and it's like, absolutely, just having some, Vince McMahon with the WrestleMania, like the fact that he even attempted to put something together and give people something to look forward to, to me, I thought was awesome, because it's like people do need something, and like you said, the psychological backlash of all this, like. I think in some cases there's some positive things that could come out of this. You pick up a hobby you've been kind of procrastinating picking up for a while. You could, but there's some bad things too. Like, you can't really miss somebody if you're with them all the time. There's a lot of people who are going to be together way more often than they're used to, that are going to realize, like, holy shit, we've never spent as much time together, and now we're driving each other crazy. And I think it's a combination of, like, not just the relationship or the people you live with or the people you're interacting with, but I think, like we've discussed, like, it's the anxiety of not knowing what the hell's going on, what to believe, how long is this going to go for. Like, I think all that's creating this stress and this internal pain that's going to cause so many other issues. I don't know if you're familiar with this book. I forget who the doctor is. I think he passed away. It's called Mind Over Back Pain.
No, I'm not.
So it was this doctor who had, like, all these surgeries, all these back surgeries, and after, he looked at, like, hundreds and thousands of like MRIs and X-rays, and he's like, what the hell? He's like, there's no consistency. He's like, there's some people who have really fucked up backs and say their pain is very little, and there's people who have not messed up backs, they're not that bad, and say the pain's a lot. And so he's like, he started kind of eventually exploring other possibilities. So what he found out, so he started asking patients, like, stuff like what's going on in their lives, where are they in life, like if they have any other stresses or issues. And real quickly, he started finding out that the pain wasn't caused by the physical thing he was seeing, but it was a mental stress that was causing this other pain. And that these people who had high amounts of pain were either, like, lost a loved one, going through a divorce, going between jobs, had some uncertainty in life. And it's a really interesting book called Mind Over Back Pain. And and it's, so it goes back to your point, like, the power of our brain and how we feel and our mental state, and a lot of the negativity that we're seeing, and I think even some of the rage we see from people who are attacking maybe somebody like you or me, who are posting something, like, just because we're asking a question, will be attacked. I think a lot of it is just this built up stress. It's this built up just uncertainty that's creating this anxiety that's making them react emotionally.
No, that's a great point. You mentioned earlier, like, human connection. There was a study. Actually, I had read an article on this, and I use it sometimes when I speak. But the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is human connection. And so, I think about that right now, like how many people are suffering from that right now, because we have such a disconnection, from other humans. And if we can align on one thing, it would be, how do we respect, real human connection, what that really, really means. And people are uptight, they're at home. You just imagine, I don't have kids yet. And I can imagine, I had kids for 10 years. I've been working nonstop, going, I get home late, doing the thing. And then all of a sudden I'm at my house with 2 or 3 kids running around and my wife, and they're screaming and going. And then and this is, all of us, I can't go out. I can't go to the gym. I can't. So yeah, it's like a pressure cooker. This is going to be written about for years, the mental impact that this has had. So yeah, people are online, and they are a little bit more on edge than normal. And it's something that we need to really look at, but we got to get back to, the core idea that real human connection is what's important. It's not exactly the online write a comment. It's not exactly online write a Facebook post. That's not real human connection. This is closer human connection. This isn't even the close, it's not in person, intimate. Hey, to where you can almost feel energy. I don't know how to quantify that, but that's what it is. It's a feeling. What is love? It's a feeling. It's like this thing that you can't exactly describe, put into words, but is there. And so that's what the one-on-one human interaction to me is that we're missing. And I think it's like taking oxygen out of our planet, basically. It's ironic that people are really dying of hypoxia with this coronavirus thing. That's what's kind of coming out, and I feel like that's what they're doing. They're sucking the oxygen out of here for people. We realize how much we need that human connection. And, this is either going to divide us even more or bring us closer together. And it's ultimately, our choice, but we can't just alienate groups. And that's for everybody. We should accept, different ideas and be open, because we all really want human connection.
You're absolutely right. I'm sure you're familiar with the rat park experiment, when they the one when they gave either cocaine or heroin to rats, and they kept coming back to the water, and then eventually died. And then they're like, I think it was Canadian scientists were like, well, one thing we're not taking into consideration is the cage has become a part of the experiment. So they created a giant, basically warehouse where they created a natural habitat for the rats, food, places to play, other rats to mate with. And they did the same experiment, put the substance in the water. I don't remember if it was heroin or cocaine, whatever it may be. And the rat came, drank it once, and went away. And what they learned from this experiment was it wasn't coming to the water because it was addictive, because of the addictive properties. It was coming to the water because it was unhappy. It was stuck in a cage. And that substance brought it a little bit of happiness. And I'm a big fan of the importance of that experiment, because I've had people on like Ohan Hari, who wrote Lost Connections, and Justin Wren, very similar. Justin Wren dealt with the Bellator and then UFC fighter. He dealt with depression, addiction, and then when he found a purpose in helping getting clean water to Africa, his whole life changed. And I think fulfillment and community are so important. I mean, I look at going back to Portugal and seeing that, like, where my parents were raised and born, houses with no running water, but my dad's one of 12, my mom's one of 7. I mean, huge families, and of course the joke is always, oh, we didn't have TV, so what do you think we were doing, but they weren't unhappy. And Dr. Christopher Ryan, who I'm a huge fan of, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He wrote the book Sex of Dawn and Civilized to Death. Huge fan of him. He has a podcast called Tangentially Speaking, and he's been on the podcast before. And I'm a huge fan of him because he talks about this a lot. And because his new book, Civilized to Death, asks the question, what is progression? Like, are we think this human civilization is progressing to something better, but yet we have more material things, but yet we have more addiction, more depression, more unhappiness. We keep trying to fulfill ourselves with material things, and those things don't make you happy. And you look at communities that the income inequality or the equality from the poorest to the richest is very little, and those people are really happy. Like, the signs of depression and anxiety and any negative feelings whatsoever and envy are very low. But then you have a community where there's like super rich and super poor. Everybody's unhappy. Because you think like, I need to be like them, or I'm not as good as them because they have the newer car. I need to get that newer car. And it's all, it's like one of my favorite quotes, satisfaction is the death of desire, which is actually I know that quote from it's a Hatebreed album from back in the day when I was growing up, one of the metal bands I liked a lot. And satisfaction with death of desire always stuck with me, because it's like, it really is that simple. Like, satisfaction is the death of desire. You get satisfied, desire's gone. You move on to the next thing. And that's what material things do. But the happiness and love you get from friendships, from friends. I've heard you talk about the 3 Fs, which I think it was super fascinating. And to me, those are the happiness. That's the stuff that's going to keep you happy for long periods of time. That's really fulfilling. That's why I love meeting old people who are closer to the finish line than the starting line. Like, when you get to reflect on the majority of your life, you start realizing like what's really important. You start realizing, you know, what life is really about, the things that really brought you happiness, and all the things you spend too much time worrying about that really weren't significant. And I think having kids will do that. I think being around friends and family. I mean, at the end of the day, like when somebody passes away, it's like you don't think about like how much money they made or how successful they were. You think about like how many times we laughed together, the stories we told, the adventures we went on together. Like those are the things that you remember. And now more than ever, like this is the thing, the social distancing. That's why I even hate the term, because you're asking people to not just not be communal and not together, you know, not get together with their friends and loved ones, because now I know family members that won't go see each other because they're quarantining themselves and they're scared shitless. And I'm like, this, like, for your psyche, this can't be healthy. You know, we you know, in prison we punish people by putting them alone, and now we're willingly punishing ourselves, you know. And it's like, so what does that tell you, you know? And so I think this is like you've been saying, I think it's super dangerous, like going these long periods of time with the uncertainty, with the being alone. I mean, I think addiction has a lot more to do with you know, we're like pleasure. I say we're pleasure monkeys, right? And I'm sure that wasn't original thoughts. I probably got that from somebody, but you know, we're pleasure monkeys. So it's like, if you don't have pleasure from community or friendships or loved ones that really enjoy your company and you enjoy their company, then you're going to find pleasure somewhere else. You're going to find pleasure in like the substance. You're going to find pleasure in this, you know, this addiction, whatever it may be. But this also goes into, to tie it all in, because I go in these long rants and sometimes I don't stop, to tie it all in, like addiction, you can tie it all in with what's going on right now, because people who are addicted to power and money, I think, are the ones pushing this. And I think that when you look at the symptoms of addiction, right, just the symptoms, not what's causing it or what you're addicted to, but you look at the symptoms of addiction, if you put money instead of alcohol, like the symptoms are the same. And, you know, but if you're addicted to money, you know, which means, you know, you'll screw friends and family to get more of it. You'll do things that aren't morally right. Your whole life revolves around getting more of it. It's a temporary fix when you do get it and you need more. Like these are all symptoms of alcohol or painkillers, whatever. But when your addiction is money, we look up to you like, oh, you're a successful businessman. You're doing really well in life. It's like, no, they're addicts. Just they're addicted to something else. And Chris Ryan said this, and it's so true. He's like, when the winners of in the system we created, the winners are the people who are financially rich and powerful. When they're unhappy, then that needs to make you reevaluate the system. Like, so even the winners are losers. You know, they're the most depressed. They're addicted to substances. Then we have to reevaluate the way we've created this society and system.
Yeah, I think that we're pretty close to there. I think everybody's at a point where, you know, there's never been as much of a dividing time. I could keep going back to the division, but you know, it really is. And the ones that are going to win out of this are those that have the most money in cash, because you know, we're going to have prices. You know, real estate's going to drop. I don't know how much, 30 to 50% probably, maybe more. A lot of people are going to be poor. It's actually kind of like the worst parts of capitalism. You know, the parts where people are really getting capitalized, you know, on. That's what we're, you know, likely to see out of this thing. And, you know, in reality, though, it's like more crony capitalism, though. You know, that's really what we're seeing. But, you know, a lot of the people that are going to be hurt in this, though, too, on the left, you know, they don't leave a lot of room for a bridge either. So, you know, people will look at me and say, oh, he's, you know, they could say I'm one of these rich dudes or whatever. I mean, they don't know my whole story, but, you know, and my ideas are probably a little different based on my experience, but I want the best for people. I want the best for everyone. I believe people should work hard. I believe people should be given opportunity. I was raised not wealthy by any means, worked my way up, but, you know, there's not a good bridge right now between those ideas with a lot of the people that are going to be really suffering right now. And so I see a lot of them online going into, oh, this system is really messed up because I don't have money right now. And they think that money is this evil thing. It's the money's fault. It's the fact that they have to work for money. It's like, well, okay, well, what are you suggesting otherwise? And there's this is how it's always operated as far as money kind of makes things go around. As far as I always say, money solves all problems. Not having money causes. That's really what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. But it solves those specific problems that lack of money causes. And people's insecurities with making money and with money, they're going to have to get over that. Because yes, when the economy was going up like it has, things can seem easy, but they're not respecting how hard it actually is to make money. Making money from scratch is not easy. A job isn't our right. It's not our right to have a job. If you work hard and you can provide value for a company, you can get a job. Or if you work hard and you start your own business, you can possibly make money with that, which is even more difficult. Making money from your own business, if you start from the ground up, that's really complicated. But if they haven't experienced that, they don't really understand the value of that. And they say, oh, you're not paying your fair share. What's interesting, a lot of the people that say you're not paying your fair share or have said it in the past, when they start making money, they're like, oh, I'm paying too much in taxes. Hey, it almost never fails, by the way. Almost never fails. But I say that because there's a lot of misconceptions about what this system that we have is, which is really a mixed economy. We're a mixed economy. We're not capitalism. We're not socialism. We're a mix that leans way more on the capitalist side. But a lot of the ones in Europe are a mix, but lean more on the socialist side per se. But people have to at least appreciate how money is created or how value is created. And, that's part of the bridge building. So I think that there's a big divide, that there's that 0.1% per se that, is evil, that's just trying to make as much money as possible, not worried about how much people are suffering. But I actually don't think most people are like that. Even most really wealthy people I know, they're not just into people suffering. They're into helping a lot of people. They really, really are. But there's not much of a bridge. If the other side says, you guys are horrible, you're this, you're that, they're going to want to help you a lot less until eventually there's no chance of them even offering it. So it's really that top 0.1%. And even them, it's hard to say that all the top 0.1% is the problem, because I'm sure a lot of them are great people too. But I think we really just need to find the evil ones that are manipulating, the entire system. Who's behind this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing? That comes back to Epstein.
I did a great podcast with she's one of the leading researchers in this story called Whitney Webb. She wrote a bunch of really good articles for Mint Press News, and she was doing all the podcasts and interviews. She was kind of like the most in demand in regards to the story. So I'll send you the link to that, because if you have time, she goes deep, and her research is like second to none in regards to this story. But yeah, she's really, really good. I just had her on recently we talked about the links between 9/11, anthrax, Epstein, and this. She connected some dots that are really intriguing. And but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think that the majority of people, in the capitalistic world, like, they're not inherently evil. I think the system's just flawed. I think when you look at the system, for example, like next week, I believe, not to curse myself and then not happen, but next week I'm going to have the attorney who he was the main character in the movie Dark Waters. Or have you watched that? It was a great film, awesome cast, but I'm horrible with Hollywood names, so but awesome cast. But it was about this attorney who actually did work for big chemical companies and whatnot, and then a friend of the family was talking about how all these animals were dying on their farm and whatnot, and then he ended kind of looking into it, researching it, and come to find out, to make a long story short, and spoiler alert if people haven't watched it, but it's based on a true story, so I mean, maybe people have heard about this anyways. 3M and DuPont, they had research showing that C8, which is one of the chemicals they use for Teflon and a bunch of other different products, was causing cancer and causing all these issues. And this stuff is going into the water and killing animals on these farms or whatever. And this is a true story. And you look at like DuPont, for example, or 3M, who suppressed this information from the public. I think because of this this system that demands for something that really isn't possible, which is infinite growth, right? We know that like infinite growth is not possible for any company. You know, you can't just get gains every single quarter, you know. But, you know, because of that demand, they did something that wasn't morally right. And there's examples and examples of that. I mean, look at GM when they had that ignition issue. I think, you know, only a handful of people passed away, right? So a lot of people poo-poo it, right? Like, oh, you know, for people who aren't familiar with the story, there's like an ignition issue that they didn't want to recall, so they kind of hid that from the public, and they're like, we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. And then a handful of people passed away. Well, to the average person looking at that story, be like, oh, you know, maybe only one person died, or maybe only 3 people died. But if that's your relative, if that's your loved one, then the fact that it could have been prevented and somebody in a suit and tie made a not a moral decision, but a decision motivated by money, then that's going to piss you off. And so I think in some cases, that's what capitalism does work. I mean, if you have a hospital that's having great success, great doctors, great patient-doctor relationships, and great perspective on health and nutrition, and then some other hospital next door isn't doing quite as good of a job, then yeah, you're going to do well. But then once you get to the point where you're like YouTube, you're Google, you're Bill Gates, you're you know, Jeffrey Epstein, well, whoever it may be, where you have that many resources and you're connected to that many people, capitalism doesn't work anymore, because now you can rig the game. You know, you can get politics. I mean, look at Big Pharma and FDA. I mean, there's a revolving door. There's plenty of people work for Big Pharma that work for FDA and vice versa. So, you know, there's, you know, how many drugs are FDA approved, right? So the whole point of having FDA is so we're not the guinea pigs for these drug companies. Next thing you know, they're FDA approved, and a year later, taken off the market because everybody's suing them because they're dying from it or having crazy reactions to it that should have been, some of it should have been at least foreseen, you know. So it really makes you wonder, like, oh, well, how strict is this FDA stuff? And what people don't know is the pharmaceutical companies, they do their own research. So there's no law forcing them to release any research that says that their drug's unhealthy or has any adverse reaction. Like, they don't have to release that research. So which I've heard people talk about. So it's just, yeah, it does it again, like all these systems, the isms, you know, too often people would say, oh, fuck it, socialism, or fuck capitalism, or whatever. You know, you're, like you said, tribal people, they, you know, and it's like nobody wants to talk about ideas. It's like, well, okay, let's talk about it. Like, there are good things about both of them. Like, there's, you know, capitalism will force or maybe motivate a company to come out with a better thing, you know, but in some cases, it also forces companies to suppress information, right? You know, like the story of the electric car and you know, how you know, they kind of force fed us petroleum. I don't know if you're familiar with like the trolley car story, how, like, you know, at one point in America, trolley cars were kind of popping up everywhere and they're getting really popular. And then what happened was that this mysterious company bought all of them, crushed them all, and then started pushing, you know, diesel-powered PVTA buses. And come to find out, after an investigation, it was a front company for like DuPont, Firestone, GM, who basically created a front company to basically crush all these trolley cars. So that's what, you know, sometimes capitalism does, but capitalism doesn't always do that. And just like socialism doesn't always lead to evil things, it can lead to good. I mean, look at like our roads being paved. Look at our postal service. Look at policemen and firefighters. I mean, those are paid by the taxpayers, and so it's a socialist idea. Society comes together and says, this is something we're all willing to contribute for this service. So, like you said, neither one is always evil. Like, they both have pros and cons, and they're not inherently evil, you know. But I think a lot of times, like you said, people become tribal and they just say socialism is evil all the time, capitalism is evil all the time, and I don't think it's that simple.
No, it's definitely not that simple. And I guess ultimately my idea is that people just need to respect other sides. And I think that's what we're kind of missing in the world. We're not respecting different ideas. It becomes not politically correct. It becomes, this. So you're labeled one thing because of one idea, and then it causes a divide across the board. It's like, how do we work together? So it's just where we're at, though. I think, even Trump, like Trump goes and he blasts away, and he, whether you agree with him or not, I could agree with him on something, and I'm like, gosh, I wish he wouldn't just constantly do this, because you're either with him or against him. And so I do question, like, from a societal standpoint, would we have reacted? Well, I say we as in the United States, would we have reacted like this if he weren't so divisive? Whether you agree with his politics or not, if he was so divisive, would the left, really it's the left, have gone so hard at him? Let's just be real. The only chance of him not being president is if the economy tanks. That's the elephant in the room. I'm not saying this is even a conscious.
Right. You're kind of right. You're kind of right. I mean, look at Russiagate, right? They pushed the shit out of that until it was so obvious there's nothing there. And now it's like, well, what's plan B, right? And if you wanted to say, hey, let's believe that the coronavirus is something that exists. It is kind of dangerous, but hey, all we have to do is inflate these numbers a little bit. All we have to do is maybe count a couple of things as coronavirus deaths that maybe aren't, just to kind of cause this panic, create this shutdown. And next thing you know, Trump's fucked because he's stuck with a huge problem that I don't think he can solve. And also it gives Biden, because obviously they always screw Bernie, Biden, basically it gives him some ammo to throw at him during these debates, because now you have everything he's done throughout this whole time to critique. You can critique every little thing, and you can keep going at him. And because he's never been in that situation, or no other president has ever been in a similar situation, it's hard to argue that he couldn't have done things differently or better, because nobody knows what the right way of handling this is. So it really, like you said, it's not that hard to believe that somebody is using this for fuel or a method to screw him, because they realize, like, they don't really have a candidate who's going to go toe to toe with him in a debate and really win over the people.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's across the board that's what's happening, but there's no doubt in my mind that there are people out there that know that if they tank, if this thing tanks, Trump has a better chance of being out of office. And I've
said it. Bill Maher said it. Bill Maher said.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't. But it's not surprising.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the same guy who gave millions of dollars to Obama. But he said, he's like, I would rather have a recession. He's like, if you could guarantee Trump doesn't become president, something along these lines. I'm paraphrasing, but you can look up the video. He talks about how he'd rather have if a recession meant Trump doesn't get reelected, he'll take the recession or depression or whatever it may be. I'm like, well, how crazy is it? That's easy.
That's insane. That is insane talk, and everyone should know that he's saying that because yeah, it's not just a recession; it's a depression. Basically, he's saying if all these people have to die because of the poverty that this causes, I'm okay with these people dying if Trump's not president. That's sick. I mean, in reality, let's just translate what he's saying by that. Other people might not break it down like that. They could be subconsciously saying, gosh, I hope this thing keeps going because, it's going to make Trump look bad. Maybe we're going to get him out. That is insane self-talk to me. I mean, you can't, this idea that you can tank if we tank the economy, that it's good because Trump is out. The fact that that's even out there, that's a sickness right there. That's a sickness.
And how selfish, because he's not going to be as affected as many other people.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like I was saying, people will die because of it. If this thing was, let's simplify this. If this thing has been blown up out of proportion for any other reason but not wanting Americans to die, then they're actually killing people. That's what's happening right now. People are going to die because suicides are already up. You're going to see people with cancer, heart disease, all these other things that aren't getting the treatment that they need. I mean, they say elective surgeries. That's a broad term. There are surgeries that people need. With stage 4 cancer, you don't want to wait a month. You don't want to wait 2 months. You need to take action quick with any cancer ultimately. So no, people will die because of the response to the coronavirus. The question is it, does it make sense overall? Are we keeping enough people safe by doing that? That's a reasonable, I think most of the people in government, that's what they're really concerned about. That's cool. But if you're doing it to just tank the economy to get Trump out of office, and that's your intention, that's pretty sick to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know I didn't really tell you I was going to keep you for this long, but
it's all good, man.
The conversation is fun. I like to take advantage of it. But thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I love your just having, these open discussions about everything and anything. Like you said, it's so hard to find. In many cases, it's so hard to find people who are willing to just be like, hey, let's just throw out our ideas. Let's challenge each other. Let's just, have an open, honest discussion. And I think at the end of the day, if somebody's honestly being sincere and they're trying to be honest and you're just seeking truth or answers, like there's nothing wrong with that. And we shouldn't be attacked for that. But for people who are listening, who want to know where they can get more information about your hospital, what type of treatments you deal with and stuff like that. Oh, and your podcast, of course.
Sure. Yes, there's a couple things. One is CHIPSAhospital.org. It's CHIPSA hospital.org. And then we're launching, it was supposed to be at the end of this year, or actually fall of this year, United Cancer Centers. We're the first institution to implement the new right to try legislation. So we built a team that is kind of just amazing scientists and medical doctors to work with us to launch this thing. So you can go to unitedcancercenters.com. We're supposed to open the first one in Nashville, coming up. I'm not sure it's going to happen as quickly now because a lot of things have changed. But go to unitedcancercenters.com and check that out as well. The podcast is the Big Idea Podcast.com. And it's a podcast where I just have conversations about big ideas. You're talking about ideas are what's important, not necessarily capitalism or socialism. Victor Hugo says an idea whose time has come can't be stopped. And so we got to figure out what those powerful ideas are right now and present them in a way where people can take them in and run with them for the betterment of society. So that's just my belief.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, and you always have great quotes and just a lot of things that are just like words of wisdom that stuck with me. Like I said, the 3 Fs and some of the other quotes you've said. And I love that because you I think what people, if they don't know who you are, what they're going to love about your podcast and what you do is that you're sincerely a good person who just, I think the best, we talk about capitalism and whatnot. I also believe that the most successful people are people who are really passionate about what they're doing, and the success comes afterwards. You look at like Joe Rogan. He had like I don't give a fuck type of attitude. I'm going to talk to people I want, and just talk for 3 hours, and I don't care if people think it's too long. And then if success comes, great, and then look at it. So I think people really see past the bullshit. People. I think the reason why podcasts have gotten so popular is for that reason, because everything on TV, like we talked about, articles, headlines, everything seems to be trying to deceive you or sell you an agenda. And then when you listen to these type of real conversations, people are like, oh, this is a nice, taste of fresh air, because I get to hear just honest people having honest discussions, and I don't feel like they're trying to push me in any direction, So I think there's definitely a need for, I know there's already enough podcasts, but there's definitely a need for more podcasts like these who are just willing to have these honest discussions. So thanks. Yeah. So appreciate your time, and I'll put all your links to your hospital and all your stuff to your podcast, which is also on YouTube and anywhere you can get podcasts. I'll put that all in the show description, and hopefully keep in touch, and we'll talk again in the near future.
All right, Ricky, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for the opportunity, man. And I actually look forward to talking to you really soon.
Hey, great. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Take care.